Hello, I'm Stain Docton. You may or may not know me from things. I'm here today with legotd61. You can say hi if you want to.
Hello.
Lovely. So I know that this is our first time interacting. I believe
Yeah.
just in general.
Don't
So if
believe
you want to
we've
say
met.
anything,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't think so. I wasn't at any of the object conventions, which I would have loved to see. They're just all like West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm Go Online by legotd61, or if you see me in some credits, also Braden Whiteside. I've worked on a multitude of shows for over a decade, some of which including Object Mayhem, Battle for BFB, recently Teapot, Nightly Manor, Paper Puppets, Object Invasion for a little bit. The list goes on. One of the first shows made in the OC I made, called Animation Island, back in 2011. It's not necessarily the third. I know a lot of people say it's the third object show to be made, and I guess it's the third show to have a consistent release schedule.
That's fair. It'd
Yeah,
be
there's a
like
couple shows where it's just like one episode, where it's
from
like
12 years ago.
yeah, but I think it's the third most well-known object show.
Because it go from BFDI to II to that.
Yeah.
I'd assume.
And then there's the alleged Total Fruit Island, which has proof of existing, but there's not much footage, or
Yeah.
no one has videos of the episodes.
It's like an archive.
Yeah,
They're just like everyone trying to.
it's like
Yeah.
lost media.
Honestly. All right. So I think we should just get started with, as you just mentioned, the extensive list of projects you've worked on. I'm assuming most of them have been animation.
Yeah,
I
earlier.
think that's a
yeah,
yeah.
for most of it's been animation. Until like the last couple of years.
And that's, I'm guessing, mostly been VA work or audio work.
Yeah.
So I think we can just start with the animation aspect, which I don't know how much of it you do nowadays, but in general, animation is just a completely different playing field in regards to just where you're at on a given day can completely affect your work and your workload and how that ends up being completed. So I guess for you, especially a few years ago, back when you were doing a whole lot of animation with a bunch of different projects, I guess maintaining workload, how difficult of a task was that? And I guess how efficient were you at keeping up with, say, deadlines or even personal projects if you had any at the time?
I think it really depended on the project. For things, I remember when I used to work on Object Mayhem, around the first couple episodes, I was a co-animator, but most of the time my scenes would never make it into the episode because I wasn't that good at animation at the time. So the scenes that did make it into the episode were pretty average or heavily edited. It wasn't until a bit later into the show's timeline where I would like get actual full scenes to do. Episode 15 was not the last time, but it was one of the first times where I think I had a I guess you could say well animated scene, because that was done in Flash compared to what the show used to be animated in Anime Studio, or I believe it's called Moho now.
I don't know.
But,
I don't know for sure.
yeah. Anime Studio was a program that a lot of people used in the OSC, mainly because Adam Cast used it for Inanimate Insanity, because it was either that or Macromedia Flash. And I believe Anime Studio was a bit easier to learn and use, because a lot of things like keyframes or like just input, it was very easy to manipulate
It was
things
numbed
in
down,
there.
kind of.
It has its benefits, like if I'm doing hand motion, or like if I'm trying to make something look like, for example, I'll have sometimes I'll put something on like a popsicle stick and like, oh, pretend it's like being moved up and down. It's like very good for very specific hand motion compared to Flash, where it's very I guess more detailed. But it comes with a few quirks, and it's just really outdated compared to nowadays. But yeah, going back to workload, when I worked on Object Mayhem, it would be like, oh, I'm so excited to do the scene, I'll just crank it out very fast.
Right.
And that can be applied to a lot of projects. Some projects is just, I want to work on this, compared to I can take my time on, you know, this other thing. So when it came to Animation Island episode 5, and it was the longest episode, it was like 12 minutes, I believe, came out as. But
wow,
compared, I mean,
for 2011 as well. That's
I mean, I guess this was the second iteration of Animation Island, like the reboot.
Right.
But
yeah.
before then, the show never had a script, so I would always do stuff like in Anime Studio just on the fly, or if there was a script, it was very bare bones. So yeah, I'm looking at, it was 10 minutes. Yeah, so this episode had my brother, who also voiced Bouncy Ball in Object Mayhem, wrote this script. So it was long. I wasn't used to these long episodes. I was used to just doing, okay, scene done, what are they gonna do next, and just do that. So it wasn't much of this thing happens and then the next thing happens. It was very, oh, stuff comes back later in the episode. It's actual different locations. So that was a bit challenging, because I actually had to plan out how things would work. And the longest scene, which ended up being like 4 minutes, was the actual challenge performance, because the challenge was to do a cheer on a soccer field.
Right.
And I didn't know. I mean, before then, I would just looking back, it was just like extremely inefficient. But every shot before this episode was a different file. So like, even if it's just like one line or like 2 seconds, it would be a new file.
That's interesting, actually.
Which, yeah, it's really inefficient. So with this, I took the opposite deep end, and I left the whole portion of that episode in a file. So it was like a 4-minute file, and it was just very daunting, and it was just like hard to animate, because it was just like, oh my god, I don't want to animate this like 4-minute scene. So it was like about a year and a half where I just wasn't really working on it. But then eventually I just like farted it out, and the episode released. Because what? My co-animator at the time, Brain Flakes, well, they go by Brain Flakes now, they used to go by Brain Cool. They are one of the most underrated heroes in the OSC. They used to animate for a lot of different shows, and they're really good at like replicating the style. But like they did like half the episode's animation, and that was the whole reason I was able to get it out, because I was just focused on that like last portion of the episode, and they did like everything else. Where am I going with this? So you had that, and then when that, I did a couple animations here and there. I did a scene for Object Invasion, and this was when I was starting to learn Flash, because I was very big on Anime Studio. I was one of the last people to like learn Flash, or Adobe Animate as it is now. So learning it was very tricky, because it wasn't I can just click on the screen and a keyframe will make automatically. I didn't know you had to like, press F6 and to make your own keyframe. So I was trying to get help from people, and my first like full Flash animation was actually an II audition.
Really?
Yeah, Whitemator, for Thanos and
Right.
general effects art on Inanimate Insanity. They were an animator for II at the time. Or it was either they were an II animator or they were, you know what? No, they weren't. I believe they were. They just got hired, but they were teaching me how to do things in Flash. And I think for my first Flash animation, it turned out really well. If you ever want to find it, it's like Inanimate Insanity season. No, it was with Fan and Knife. Yeah, it was. I think
Quite
turned
possible
out.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I think it turned out really well.
Oh, I got a link here.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, you got denied. Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. I think at the time it was like pretty good. It was a little bare bones. I mean, some things could be better, but I was really proud of myself for how it turned out. I started another audition, but never finished that. But this was around the point where I was like starting to feel like I was not keeping up with the quality of animation in the OC, because this was like a start of like a turning point of where it's just like people were starting to like learn like things and like actually how to animate. So
Right.
and I was just like kind of falling behind. So and then what it led up to the Audrey season 2. It was like season 1 was like close to finishing, but it was just like, okay, I guess we're doing a season 2 now. I was an animator on the first episode. I had the scene where Perfume has a hand mirror. It's like, you got this. And then they see they see the actual character mirror, and then they like scream and they shatter. I did that scene, or at least a good portion of it. But I guess the head animator at the time her name was Natty 23, who is a bit infamous now. Not really well respected. There's a lot of problems. I won't go into them, but they were very specific about, you can only animate this, or like, you cannot use these eyes, they look bad. And
really?
It was very frustrating, because maybe it's like, you could say I wasn't learning, or I wasn't keeping up with the times, but it was like, it felt like every time I tried to expand on my animation ability, I would just get shut down, because you're not following the proper etiquette of it. And I guess Ajiman was never really about being like other shows. Ajiman was known for being just goofy and dumb stuff happening. Like, if I'm thinking of Ajiman, I'm not thinking of writing or like cream of the crop, visuals. I'm just thinking of slapstick. But it was a event that turned me off from animation, and I haven't done really anything since. The last animation I did after that, and it was years later, it was a scene in the latest episode of Paper Puppets Take 2.
Oh, really?
It was the challenge explanation scene for the board game. Because I was just like, because the episode was taking a while to come out, and I was just like, oh, it's animatic style. I think I can do it. So I was proud of it, how it came out. I mean, like, it showed that I still had the chops to do it. I just never have really applied myself to do animation. Like, if you were to sit me down, like, you must make a reboot of like Animation Island, I could probably animate it. It's just that it's not really something I enjoy doing. I find other aspects of show creation to be a bit more fun, in my opinion.
No, totally, and I think that ends up coming down, or like has a nice moral just in regards to, I guess, the effect of other people's views and outputs on what is generally like the accepted norm. Because as you said, this person, which I'm blanking on the name at this point,
Natty.
Yeah, who, because you said at the time was like very particular about how an object show had to be.
Yeah,
and I feel like looking at that in hindsight compared to now, we're seeing such, I think, probably the biggest variety between shows in a while.
Yes.
And just in regards to creation and creative liberty as a whole.
And
it's really just, yeah.
One thing I am very picky about, many people will agree with me on this, is like, I like it when a show sticks to a specific style and doesn't really deviate from that. Like, when I was on BFB, I would be known for typing out these long revision notes, being like, oh, this doesn't look right, or oh, you're not sticking to the style.
Right.
Which, if you go back to like Natty, I guess I'm a bit of a hypocrite complaining about that. But I mean, I love it when a show has its own like unique style. And I guess part of me is just I want the show to look good. I want it to stand out from the rest. So when there's like an aspect of it that's just like sore thumb, I just can't help but like want it to improve that.
No, totally.
So and it can be a good trait and a bad trait, because sometimes I'll focus on this like one thing, like when in Nightly Manor Part 4 went in Top Hat's apartment, there's just the grocery bag on like the half wall that through certain shots it wasn't consistent, and I'd always peck at Alan's like, hey, can you make sure this is on like one specific point? And he was always like, whatever, it's not big of a deal. And I was like, no, it has to be very important. It's very important. It must stay there.
I think that personally might bring like us to kind of like the next point of just experiences working on different shows, and just kind of, because as you talked about revision notes, and it's not necessarily just a fact of wanting everything to be like deliberate just to be deliberate, which I think is kind of what Natty's point was, of like things being the way that they quote unquote should be. I think it just in regards to that, it just came down to you wanting to make sure shows worked out in a nice way and were overall the best that they could be, which I feel like could be two completely different viewpoints on very similar actions, you know?
Yeah. Because I know Natty had this used to have this like long list of like rules of object show animation, and it was just like the very, very strict thing. It was like, you can't do this, you can't do that, and it was just like, if you want to follow a style, that's great, but like this was just like a general object show animation thing, and this wasn't like a tutorial of like how to do. It was like, oh, how to nest or how to do movie clip mouths. It was like restriction. It was more of like restrictions. Like, you cannot do this.
Totally.
You cannot do that. And while I'm a big believer in creativity through limitation, that it was just like
limiting.
Yeah, it was just like, well, it was there's too much to think about. It was like, am I doing it correctly? It was just like, it was kind of silly.
It's a lot, as like a younger person, it might be a lot to also think about when trying to fit in with the norm.
Yeah, and when you're starting out in animation, you obviously, it's not, your early work is not going to be great. Like, that's why you make it in the first place. You have to improve somewhere. So it all just becomes like discouraging. Yeah. So you do you as you start out in animation. People will give you tips from here to there, but if I was just given like if you don't follow these rules, you're never gonna succeed. It's like,
no, absolutely,
yeah.
I think that was a really great way to kind of sum that up. so I feel like moving on from just the overall animation, and we talked about, I guess, some experiences working on some of the shows. But do you do much voice acting as a whole?
I still do. I love voice acting. Even if I don't directly do the voices, I deal with voice acting all the time in object shows. Yeah, as a like voice processor. So I'm like always preparing and cleaning up the audio. I'm like kind of the guy when it comes to it.
I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the audio engineering. So I can kind of like try to combine some of those questions.
But yeah, in terms of actual voice acting, recently I've done a couple minor roles.
Really?
What the Instigator in Nightly Manor. It was the rubbery. It was like the small. It was in the end of part 1. It was like it's like we're gonna find out who this is. We'll make sure we have all the evidence we need.
Oh no, yeah, the end of episode 3.
Yeah, it was. I think. Yeah. And then they were
the end of chapter 1,
part 5, when the hot dog fell on the
right.
That was like it was supposed to. I mean, originally the scene was just like it just cut to Speaker and like Rubbery, and they were just gonna be like, oh, they heard the whole time. That was just gonna be it. And I think Alan mentioned like, well, what if you just like. He has to hold food. What is he holding? And I was like, what if he holds a hot dog? And I'm like, wait, well, what if there's a bunch of like stuff on it, like mustard relish and just like a bunch of goo, and it just falls on Rubbery because like Rubbery's like so small, it's just completely encased him. And then I think Alan was just like, I have like a throwaway line.
Perfect.
Because one of our jokes at the time, there was like a video of like, there was like a forest fire. And it was like, oh, I really let out the Chris Griffin in me. And it was just some guy looking at the forest fire, and they were like, oh my god. And
why was that actually like a killer impression, though?
Yeah, so I kind of just made it into the episode. And it was one of the funniest parts.
That is nice.
But in other voice acting aspects, what I did... I was a gem in the newspaper puppets. I was like a one-liner, but as a main, like actual competitor, as like a contestant in like competition shows.
Right. I mean, I assume Animation Island.
Oh yeah,
but that was again years ago.
Sharpener, Rubber Ball and Animate Insanity. I was in the Prime Shimmer Choir.
Oh, really?
And actually, I think I can talk about this, but when Animate Insanity Invitational was in pre-production, I was actually asked to do an audition for Blueberry.
Were you really?
Yeah. So I never ended up getting the role, but I was still excited. To like, oh, there's a chance I could be in the season.
Yeah. At least for me, it's always like so fascinating to hear these stories about potential or success in roles, because the voice acting process and the whole audition process, I feel like it's one of the only things that feels rewarding to not win and rewarding to win. Well, not win, but like, get accepted. So I feel like for voice acting, and you can correct me if you're wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, English. But I feel like comparing voice acting auditions and like tryouts to animation, it takes so much time and dedication to make something even small that when you are declined, if you are declined, it feels not degrading, but it feels like there was so much effort put into something that didn't happen. When I feel like for voice acting, I don't want to say it's necessarily like a throwaway, but voice acting kind of just feels lighthearted to do, and you end up just having way too much fun doing something for half an hour, just messing around with 2 lines to the point where it doesn't even feel like the end of the world if it doesn't go your way.
Yeah, and
both
there's always a role for you, like
entirely.
Don't get this role. Like there's always people who fit a certain character, and some people will get typecasted. But totally. Sometimes you'll get a someone who does something so well, or like one in like you never really heard of this person, and they pull like a killer audition, and it leads to a lot of success.
Absolutely. I know that for me, like, because everybody has their little dreams in like the community, but like there's always like that thought of what if I'm able to do something like that, and I feel like that's especially for like smaller creators, and this could be taken from animation, audio work, voice acting, kind of what makes us drive and strive to continue doing what we do in the OSC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just like the possibility of what if this happens. And I feel like, I don't want to say it's like a blind light in a sense, because it's a light that, you know, is gonna happen. As you said, everyone finds their spot, you know? So I feel like, given time and dedication, everybody can do what they want to do in the given OSC.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The OSC is very good at letting you experiment and just
Absolutely
get experience. I mean, like, where a lot of jobs in the real world require like years of, you know, experience or practice and work in this field, you get that in the OSC. Like, there's people here with over 10 years of animation experience, whereas normally that's something you would get outside of college, like right after you're done with college. Many people have that before they even get to college. So we're able to get
nowadays is like insane.
Yeah, it'll lead to a lot of job opportunities. Like, I've gotten a lot of, you know, different job opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, from BFB and just connections. So,
even speaking of people who are in this community right now who are doing things in regards to just working on shows, a couple people have been interviewing recently within the ages of like 17, 18, 19, 16 even, right? All these people, like, you're not even finished with schooling and you're already doing things that could right now be monetary and could possibly jumpstart an entire career. And I feel like that's kind of a really beautiful thing in regards to what the OSC can accomplish with its creators. Is being able to found to, like, you know.
Yeah.
I think you understand the gist of what I'm trying to say.
It's like a little sub bubble of the internet where a lot of
entirely
people start. It's like kind of how a lot of people who worked on The Misadventures of Flapjack on Cartoon Network ended up doing a lot of different shows. Like led to Adventure Time, Regular Show, Steven Universe.
Yeah.
So all these shows. I feel like that's kind of the same thing here, where, you know, you have people now, you know, working for so many different studios, and like you have people working for Netflix, you have people working for Fresh TV on Total Drama. Like, we've come full circle.
Entirely. Which they're having new seasons soon. Let's see what happens with that. You heard about that? Was that back in?
Yeah, they announced it last year.
2021. I want to say February.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was like really excited. I know me and a lot of people were like, "Yay! Finally, a new season of Total Drama."
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's coming out this year. I'm hopeful.
That would be craziness.
Because that's how a lot of people got their start, just from Total Drama.
Yeah. I mean, going back to like Flapjack, which this is branching off of OSC, but like stuff like that, and which we could tie into OSC related things. It's the fact that like Flapjack, you can see so many, for such an underrated show, I feel, for like the masses. You can see inspiration from that show branching out to so many different things, and so many different other shows and etc. OSC is no different, for obvious reasons. Yeah, no, it's comforting in a sense. So yeah, I think we're gonna move on to our next topic, which was kind of going hand in hand with voice acting, which is just overall audio engineering. You don't see enough of that really in the OSC. I don't see a lot of audio workers.
Yeah.
Because I think the whole point of like back in BFDI, like when that first began, it kind of set up a bunch of staples, and one of which I felt was just the fact that a lot of the music, or really any of the music back in like early BFDI, you know, wasn't theirs. a lot of the sound effects were from these like free sound effect websites. A lot of the music was insert random Kevin MacLeod, etc.
Yeah, I don't really blame anyone. It's kind of
No,
hard
entirely.
to make your own audio and just sound effects and
As
music.
12-year-olds making something like that, obviously as well, that's gonna be a whole different.
I mean,
kinda thing.
anyone can, put in loops from GarageBand and call it a
True.
song. I'm guilty. I've done that, but I think in terms of like, I don't want to say actually good music, but like well thought out, like instrumental tracks. I think we're seeing a lot more of that.
Which
And
I am thrilled.
yeah.
Thrilled about. For audio engineers yourself, I'm assuming you do more in regards to overall audio more than just music and how it fits the background.
I mean,
which-
I've done. I I go to college for music, but I find a lot of joy in just the audio. You just like Foley art and that
Yeah,
whole
no,
aspect
entirely.
of things. So I originally, in high school, I was a lighting person.
Oh, really?
So I would do like a lot of like hanging up lights and designing colors and all that. And then I kind of came into sound as like there's no one else to do it. Can you do this?
Right.
And from that, it kind of grew into something that I also really enjoyed, to where I was good at both, but then I was able to apply those audio skills elsewhere. I mean, at that point I had done audio for a couple shows, Object Invasion,
Right.
and then you know of Steamed Milk, or
I don't think so.
Gene in the OC. They Camp Objects.
Maybe it's possible.
But yeah, they had a show. It was called Anything Ever, and I remember I was in charge of audio for that. It never came out, but it was starting to see my roots. And then what also happened, where I did some audio design, and I remember I submitted one of my scenes. It was like episode 2. It was like towards the end of the episode. There was like this huge like climactic part of the episode, and I remember submitting my scene, and everyone was like, "Holy crap, this is really good!" And I was like, "Wow," and it felt really great for people to like enjoy something as so like not really thought about as audio, and that kind of led to a few things. Because
that's kind of like the flip side of the whole discouraging in animation is like the encouraging in audio. Is kind of what ended up influencing you, I guess, in a small sense.
Yeah, because audio design was really we have to do it because it's just like if it doesn't happen, then it's just like it's like, oh, we have to put in the sound effect because that's what the script calls for. And then, but yeah, I kind of took advantage of no one really is doing this kind of field. I think I can excel at that, and now I'm doing audio for a lot of big shows. I remember when the BFB auditions came out in, what was it, January? When did it come out? Like January, February? It was like, work on BFB. And I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I have to take advantage of this.
Right.
And so there was like a couple of options. There was animation, which it was hand drawn, which I'm pretty okay at asset animation, but hand drawn is a whole different thing.
Entirely.
And I can do keyframes and stuff, but I am not the best at like hand drawn at all. I can't do that. So like kudos to anyone who can make that look clean and good.
Oh no, entirely, yeah.
But
it's a whole different wheelhouse.
Music, I mean, I didn't really have the biggest portfolio of music, and then backgrounds and props are out of the question. So I was like, audio, I can do that. I can do audio.
Yeah.
So I submitted my audition. I sent in my portfolio of work, and weeks went by, and nothing really happened. And then COVID hit. I remember it was just like this. And at this time, I was in the middle of a big theater production where there was a lot of sound and lights. I was in charge of both of those, but I was doing a lot of these technical aspects. Like, I had a set of wind chimes on stage that was controlled by like a fish wire, so you couldn't see it would like go off, and you wouldn't be able to see it happen. But it was like all these like, it was like my senior opus of like creativity, and I was able to perform it. We were able to do a single performance, but we never got to do like an official like run of the show.
I'm assuming that's like compliments to COVID.
Yeah, and I was like really upset. I was really mad. I was just frustrated. It was like all this build up. It's like, oh, waiting 4 years for like senior show, final show, and then just get swept from the rug. And it was really disappointing. And then like a week later, it was like I couldn't go to bed, or like I woke up, it was like 3 a.m, and I decided to check my email, and I get a reply, or not a reply, I get a message from Michael Juan's saying, hey, congratulations, you've been accepted as an audio engineer for BFB. And I was like freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh,
right,
prayers have been answered. And that,
rightfully so.
Yeah, and then from there it just led to everything I do now.
Amazing.
It was really, I was like, oh, but then there was a lot of what's the term? You think you're not as good but you really are pretty good. Imposter syndrome. I was like thinking, oh, am I not as good as some of these other people? Because the people brought on for BFB, you got some really good people like Colbones, who did the intro for Teapot. Like, it's extraordinary. They can do animation, they can do music, they can do audio. They're like
the jack of all trades.
Yeah, jack of all trades, master of all. So it's a lot of like, oh, I need to be the best. I want to be the best. I want to be good. And I know my early work in BFB, it was I don't like it too much, but it was passable. But I really am a better fan of like my later work, like especially by BFB 30. I think I really found my footing.
That's good.
And then I know processing, or just voice processing, came out of a need for it, because for the first 2 episodes, 17 and 18, we were just kind of pitching the characters ourselves and removing background noise. Well, that led to a couple of inconsistencies. So it's just like, hey, does someone want to just do that before we start audio? And I was just like, sure, I can do that.
No
and little did I know that would be one of the main things I do in the OC now.
Started it at all.
Yeah, now there's like I have a whole thing for like listening to things no one can hear. I can read spectrograms, and it's kind of led to this evolution of more care put into the audio of shows. And
which I think over time is just going to be skyrocketing even more.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that there's a lot of care kind of put into that now. So now we're getting some really good sounding shows. I know what Teapot just won Best Audio Editing. I
didn't see much of the awards, I'll be honest. I
know some of those tweets were like unavailable, but
I mean, congrats on that. That's kind of like, that's your thing. That's your wheelhouse that you kinda...
I mean, I didn't work on Teapot at the time for that, but I can, no, it's fine. No, I love the audio in Teapot too. It's very unique, and a lot of, it's like a certain style of sound effects and such that, like, if it's like it's like a collection of certain sound effects that I just really enjoy. It's like not necessarily natural, but it's like electronic, digital. It's like a very stylized sound.
Yeah.
That I enjoy, because you have some shows. I know one, for example, has a lot of diegetic sounds, where it's just like it's all natural, it's all recorded in front of a microphone, and you know that. But then you can compare that to just a cartoon, like just a bunch of slapstick, like
Right.
it's like yeah.
Yeah, no, totally.
But yeah, I remember. Yeah, like last year was kind of a big leap and a lot of experimentation.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I get out of college, I'm definitely going to be doing a lot more freelance and that sort of aspects of just Foley art, because that's something I love. I love creating sound effects. I'll probably be doing that for the rest of my life.
Wow. Something like that, honestly. That'll do it. I think that might be all of the like major questions for me. I don't know if there's anything else you think worth it, but I would probably just go into like random little hobbies and habits and then close it off.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So this doesn't have to necessarily be in relation to the OSC. I know we've kind of ventured off of that a little bit, but just honestly anything you find interesting, and whether or not it can be tied into OSC doesn't really matter. But like, I don't know what random little things are going on in the world of
yeah.
Braden.
Well, I've said this, but I'm in college for music.
Right.
For currently performance. So I've played the trombone for 10 years. It's a long time. I've also dabbled in percussion. So, I mean, it's weird to see a lot of people online like make their own music. It's like I can perform the kind of music I'm studying can't really be replicated digitally. So, I get made fun of a lot for the music I listen to. It's a lot of like classical and orchestral and just like very profound and distinguished, music that's just like I'm an old man for listening to this.
I think for orchestral, it's just like it's such a difficult thing to replicate digitally.
It is.
Like that's just impossible.
It is the margin for human error that really makes me have an interest in it. Because with digital and MIDI, it's always going to be perfect, but that kind of eliminates the
the realness.
Yeah, the realness of it. Whereas, with performing in real life in an acoustical setting, you have to practice, you have to be perfect, or else, it can, it could, if it's wrong, it will sound wrong, but if it sounds good, it's going to sound amazing.
Right.
So, trying to replicate that is tricky. I know in Nightly Manor, Part 5, the heist explanation, I did that whole like jazz track, and I was trying to figure out like, can I get people to record this? How do I get this to sound as authentic as possible? And the one part that's solo, trombone solo, I knew I could not get a MIDI to sound that good.
Yeah.
So I was testing it out, trying to make it, but it's just like it wasn't working out. So it's like, okay, I have to record this. And like just getting the mic to pick it up and just make it sound good, and because it's tricky to record brass because it's very loud. So it doesn't really work on my Blue Yeti. It's just like it's just gonna sound like. Bleh.
No, as a trumpet player, I know entirely what you're talking about because I've tried numerous ways to try to get some with any compositions or productions I end up doing, and it's just even something as simple as tuning. Like, it seems so simple, but just even given whatever's around you and what's up in the air, it can just completely deteriorate what your horn's going to sound like in comparison to the rest of the track.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is what makes trying to combine digital work and more like natural, real, recorded from a microphone.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
It's so difficult.
You kind of have to go one way or the other. It's really hard to do it in between.
I made the mistake of trying for a song recently because I like messing around with different not temperaments, different tunings. So I'll end up taking whatever, because I use Logic Pro X, and so I'll be able to like change the overall tuning of the song, which I just enjoy doing just to get like a new feel, you know.
Yeah.
But one time I decided it'd be funny if a song that was in like, I want to say 435, no, not 435. I think it might have been like 425, like A equals 425 hertz.
That's really low.
Try to like get my trumpet. I was gonna like try to detune the trumpet, and then play from there. I've tried a little bit. It's a task. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that might be all. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate that. And yeah. I'm gonna. Is there anything else you want to say? I don't know, like some socials or something.
I guess I'm active on Twitter. I have a couple projects in the mind.
Right.
Hopefully, I will be releasing soon on my YouTube channel. I don't post often, but when I do, it's a pretty big event. I host a Camp By. It's all about sound design.
Really?
In our 3rd season. So.
No, I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I don't know if we're gonna put this on YouTube. I can probably provide a link to there. Really,
totally, yeah.
Would be great if you're listening. You could join that server. Be really appreciative. But yeah, check out new stuff. Listen to new stuff. Go watch some shows. A lot of good object shows are coming out. What? Sun just came out.
Starlight's on its way.
Starlight, I'm excited for Starlight. Oh my gosh. It is coming. It is looking and sounding fantastic. Yeah. It's really ambitious, but when it comes out, I think it's gonna set a new standard for object shows.
No,
like
totally.
This feels like a movie production. You're gonna love it.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.